guess we're probably ready to go.
Okay, I think we're official, Sean.
Great. Okay. Thanks for everybody for meeting. I'm just reviewing, what I contributed for the agenda, and I honestly didn't have anything Thursday or Wednesday or Thursday when I submitted this for the executive committee. How about you guys? Do you have anything to contribute for the executive committee?
Maybe just a follow-up about just check in about how things are going as far as trying to keep the meeting on time. Did that seem to work pretty well? Does that seem like?
I think I think so, especially this last one. We're kind of whittling down on the big, I think the most lengthy and cumbersome item was the logo, So I think we're narrowing that down quite a bit, thankfully.
I just sent out a check to pay for the logo design.
Great. How about you guys?
So also, with the clarification that we received from Andrew as far as work groups, as long as, it's only 3 or 4 people in a work group, that could eliminate for sure the interview committee and possibly the Trees for Tomorrow committee. I don't know. Maybe not, but it seems like that would help make things a little more manageable.
And to be clear, like that. So what that means is that we don't have to adhere to the same restrictions or whatever that we're working under now. Is that right? So
according to the way Andrew described it, if we made a work group.
Hey, Mary.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Mary. Hi, Phil.
Hey, Phil.
A quorum, and it's only 3 or 4 people, it can do work and report directly to the CTC about all of its activities. And that way it still gets reported according to the sunshine laws requirements. I think that, that question's been coming round and round and round. I think that was good clarification on an option to not have to write minutes about every single little thing that always gets done. So basically the work groups wouldn't make decisions. They would just do the work that the tree council decides to be.
Okay.
And then they would report back to the tree council describing all the work that they did. If that makes sense.
That seems a lot more efficient. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, great. How about you guys? How do you think everything?
I have one thing to report, and that's that I have created a new PayPal account to match our new website. Okay. So that's up, and I've sent the login information to Rodney, so he has it too. Sometime this week, I'll link it to our checking account. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
Great. Mary and Phil, we just started the conversation off with any, I how we thought things were going with the meetings currently. You know, like we've been trying to work under a little more of a formal outline and keep everything pretty well brief. And personally, I think it was effective this last time. You know, like we're getting through some of the bigger, more lengthy discussions for sure. I think, you know, namely the logo, you know, design and stuff. And you guys have any input on?
Yeah, that was great, and I'm sorry that I missed our last meeting, guys. I'm glad that Jesse was able to fill in for me, but it sounded like it went well, and yeah. So yeah, this seems to be working great. I like having this a week right after.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah. How about you, Phil? How are things going?
Phil, you're muted.
Everything seems to be fine as far as I'm concerned. It still seems to be somewhat cumbersome to have to take care of business this way, but I don't see any way around it. I feel like we're probably making the best of a bad situation.
Yeah.
Phil, we were just talking about, you know, during the CTC meeting, we got some clarification from Andrew about work groups.
Right.
And so that may be a way to get rid of a couple of these ad hoc committees. You know, as long as there's only 2 or 3 people on a work group and there's not a quorum, and work groups aren't making any decisions, you know, they just implement whatever decisions the CTC agrees to and then reports directly back to the CTC. That might be a good alternative for us.
Yeah, I like that approach, and it seems far more workable. It's not a great deal different than a small committee gathering in that you don't have a quorum of the entire council, so you can't transact official business anyway, but you would then bring your the outcome of your conversations or discussions that turn into action items or need be acted upon by the council just to the next council meeting and present it that way. Those work groups, I presume, would still need to get their place on the agenda for the next council meeting, I guess.
The one drawback to having a work group, that means that whatever happens would need to be discussed during the CTC meeting, which then could take up time from the CTC meeting. So that's the trade-off on it.
It seems like it could be boiled down to kind of we talked about this and this is what came of that conversation.
And with that note, it's time for us to start the steering committee meeting. Sorry.
All right, great. Well, we're moving right along.
4 more hours and we'll be there.
Okay, well, nice going. So I posted a few items for the steering committee meeting, and I can kick it off unless you guys want to. So it was on the agenda to talk about the Georgia Relief program. It's a grant, it's a tree planting grant, but the gist of it is tailored toward veterans, and you know, it's either to like establish a park or some type of location or replace tree canopy loss by like storms. So either initial planting or replace something lost or an aging canopy or whatnot. So we've missed the deadline, unfortunately, for 2021. But it sounds like a pretty cool program, and we would be voting for it if you guys are interested. How's it going, Mark? You guys are interested in spring of 2021. If you'd like, Seth shared with me past examples or projects that have come across his desk. I think it's administered through Georgia Forestry Commission. It's kind of a smallish grant. I think total $5,000, and he's never witnessed it go all to one entity. So, but nonetheless, just a thought there. And Mark, just to bring you up to speed, we're talking about the Georgia Relief Grant program. Seth was going to bring it up at the meeting the other day, but we were kind of limited on time. If you're interested in hearing about it, I could forward you what Seth shared with me. But anyhow, you guys have anything to add either on this or another agenda item for the steering committee? So I also had, and this is an extension of conversation with Seth and the notion of establishing making the shade grant locally for school tree plantings. And my question that I'm wondering about is if we could establish some type of program, kind of like the Trees for Tomorrow, a Trees for Tomorrow like program that was specifically tailored toward planting in playgrounds. I guess it would apply to CCSD, of course, but I don't know, Rodney, if there's a need for that on the in the local ACC park level or not. But a thought, Phil, you're on mute again.
Sorry.
Phil, is it just me that?
Now I think I have it.
Great.
Every time I tapped it, I didn't hold my finger on the button long enough. I suppose it jumped back. I like the idea and the thought. And as Rodney has said on several occasions recently, it would be nice to have, without the cumbersome aspects of the TFT program, to have some sort of memorial or community groves program continue so that we keep that avenue open for people who want to contribute to our tree planting efforts in the community. It would seem to me to work very well if we were able to establish groves at the different school sites that need canopy cover, or at playgrounds, county facilities, whatever. As long as we bear in mind the dangers of the individual tree approach, and we bear in mind staying away from some sort of long-term, perpetual, burdensome noting of gifts and grant, contributions, I guess.
I'm with you there. I think we have the benefit of hindsight on, the problems that we're, have dealt with and are currently, working through. So hopefully we'd be a little bit, more strategic, I guess, on something like that. But I think, like for quite a while and potentially considering the harsh conditions at playgrounds, I think it's probably an endless source of tree planting locations. And realistically, I think the Athens Housing Authority locations are probably the same boat, really.
The only issue that I can see that might come into play, and I don't think that it would be necessary, is that if we establish a grove at, say, a school playground or outdoor area, as such, as a community grove or a memorial grove, and we're doing a made in the shade type local project, the time frame for the two entities would be rather different. And so, I mean, with most of the grants, it would seem that we have a fairly short horizon in which we have to plan, get it done, and present a final report. The Grove, it seems, would need to stay open for a longer period of time and would be a gradually added to thing. But, if you have space and you've not filled the space, I don't see that would be an issue.
As Rodney pointed out appropriately, like it would fill the it would definitely fall in line with the educational component, get us back into the schools. And, I think that would be a nice, aspect of it. And I think, from a promotional standpoint, it's definitely, a feel good. It's something I think that people would or could get behind for sure.
Yes.
And like with the, I'm not sure, like our kids go to Timothy, and I'm not sure if this is community wide, for all the public schools or not. But they have this booster-thon, and it was Timothy's a pretty active. They have a pretty active and strong PTO, and so they were pretty quickly able to match the funds. Like the Making the Shade grant was, I think, $5,000, and they had excess money. So not only could they match that, but then they have money left over to like we actually hired a high school kid to water the first summer. That there was money for that. And there were also some pest problems that came up that they signed on for some plant healthcare aspect. So I would imagine there are varying levels of interest and contribution among the different schools and stuff. But nonetheless, from Mary, I think it's something that most everybody could probably feel, good or would feel.
I wonder what the best way to figure out what the needs are, aside from just driving around and looking at the schools. I think that somebody should probably do that. But Stacy Smith, who works with Keep Athens Beautiful under Stacy Farrell, is sort of is the liaison with all the schools. And I think she does a lot of vegetable gardening, but she might be a person for us to contact to figure out where the highest needs are. And it may be that, I know we want to steer clear of just planting one tree, but there might not be much more room than to plant a couple of trees at some of these sites. It may not end up being that big of a grove.
So, like with the turnover with the new schools and stuff, or the renovations rather, like Oglethorpe Elementary, and then Whitehead, is it Whitehead Elementary? Off of White. So, I mean, so many of those trees are just wiped off the face, So in those two instances, I know they, there's definitely space, and for whatever reason, I think this came in response, to I can't remember that name of that poor kid who was killed in that daycare, limb fell on his head, and it aligned, at least with Timothy, that aligned shortly after. There was a huge tree removal campaign, I guess, at least in Timothy and some of the other areas that instead of working with arborists, like the only way to eliminate a risk is to cut the tree down. And that was kind of the, how it went, at least what I experienced. And it's a little bit more tricky, and I think some school administrators don't know how to navigate reduce the likelihood of failure, reduce the risk level on trees. So, like that's kind of the default button, is to just go ahead and remove it, and which I think ultimately explains why it's lunar landscape in some of these schools,
I know the YMCA on Hawthorne did a campaign and planted 5 or 6 trees around their playground. I don't know. Had a little extra fundraising for that, so that was good. Is this something that would be put under the education committee?
I think that was Rodney's idea, is that it can be pigeonholed there, but I'm willing
to get the kids involved in education.
Totally, exactly, and like to further expand on making the shade, like they were part of it was each class donated or adopted a tree, and then they collected milk jugs to water them, and like there was the intention was to like have this platform of education. The either Seth or one of us come in and explain what's going on with the tree, different seasons, and need for pruning, and the different processes associated with trees, and benefits and all that. Like, so it's definitely in line with like who we are and what we do, for sure. But unfortunately, Seth is one guy, like, so it didn't, it really takes a cheerleader in the school to promote that and keep the ball rolling. And Seth was pretty limited on how much and what he could do. So that basically consisted of like one follow-up visit, basically. And so anyhow.
So I think planting trees at schools is an awesome idea, and it really is a great opportunity and something that needs to happen. From a grove perspective, so one of the perspectives I come from is how to maintain records about the activities that have happened in the past. And so my question is, why create a new Trees for Tomorrow Grove program when one already exists? Why not just use what's already in place to establish new groves? You could do a different grove program or a different just name groves, but let me share the information I have about the different groves that have been done by the CTC in the past. I'm just going to share my screen here. I don't know if you guys can see it, but if you look up here, these are Trees for Tomorrow. So we have an Airport Grove, Carl Jordan, Chase Street, a Coley, the Dog Park, Prince Avenue, Sandy Creek Memorial Park, And this is an older document I found that shows some of the schools where they planted trees and then called it a grove.
Oh, okay, great.
At least one or two of them. So my records are really convoluted, and I have to dig through tons of files to find this kind of stuff. And so any way the CTC wants to do it is fine with me. It's just, keeping in mind what that looks like when the program gets passed on to the next generations of voting members, and how that will change, and how the records get kept about it. That's the only thing I would ask you to think about a little bit.
Sure. And I would hope that there's an option to revise some of the negatives associated with the current trees for tomorrow. Like how does that, because we're looking to disband the program, right? So like, would it be,
well, that is a motion that's before the full council now and was tabled until our next meeting because we ran out of time, and maybe that's fortuitous, but somehow I got the impression in the past that the TFT program would be as it is, or it would be abolished and something else would take its place. If perchance the records keeping, the response to the donors was modified somehow, and that could just be done as a revision or a modification of the current program, then that might be the simplest approach. But I'm a little bit at a loss of, I guess I still have a hard time comprehending what the Trees for Tomorrow program is and what its breadth is. Seeing these schools have groves named, was the record keeping, the donor list treated the same way as if someone were, say, memorializing their father's death in a grove, Rodney?
I'm really not sure. I haven't seen the records. I know Sean's been up to the library and has seen the book they have. I don't know if we necessarily need to continue that. But to me, the idea of a grove is that there's some sort of a historical record, and there's some sort of pride embodied in that in order for that to be effective, someone has to keep up with those records. Otherwise, why even have a grove program at all? We could just say the tree council is helping to plant trees at this school, or we're helping to plant trees at the housing authority, and we don't have to have all these extra, steps involved.
that sounds great. And, like when the last time I went, I definitely had to blow off dust on that booklet or scrapbook. It's basically a scrapbook. I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, but kind of out of date, like not very, 1980s.
Well, it just seems if going forward, we're able to come up with a uniform approach to how we acknowledge those contributions and gifts, and then the records keeping, that could be done as simply as in the minutes, in the official minutes of the council meetings. A grove at such and such a school was opened on such and such a date, and then periodically make note of when additional plantings were made at that grove and what the full capacity of it is projected to be, and when it's closed and that sort of thing.
Well, we could do that on the website.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. If we just had a page that had a list of all the groves.
Yeah.
With a link.
With periodic updates of.
And it could even be a link to a document or a table. It doesn't, or it could just be listed straight up on the page, but it could be something that we could easily modify. Okay, I'll make a note of that.
And And, like we can, from a promotion standpoint, like we can list, like we're currently working on blank school, and here's a, like, well, our next one is Bothorpe Elementary, for example. We're currently working on Whitehead, but our next one, is because I think potential donors are definitely going to have, or potentially will have some affiliation with each particular school, so.
They'll want to see if people want to, donate via the website. It'd be great for them to see what sorts of things they're donating to, and interesting to see the species that we choose. And
so one of the benefits of sort of maintaining the Trees for Tomorrow brand or name would be that the website that could be maintained by the CTC, the Trees for Tomorrow page, could be a clearinghouse for all the different partners that were involved with the different grows. I don't know if it's necessary or not, but it just seems to me that it, instead of saying the CTC grows, you say the Trees for Tomorrow grows in partnership with the CTC. I don't know. It's just a thought.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to have the multiple different ways we've funded or brought these groves to fruition. I think it'd be a way to recognize individuals who contribute, recognize partners who contribute, and then even recognize the grants that the CTC has got. I mean, it's a lot of work for a volunteer committee to do this much and to show people the different ways in which these things come about and the different people who've played roles in it. I think would be another good part for recognition purposes.
That's great. Yeah, I like that idea.
Well, that may be problematic to the motion that is on the floor at the upcoming meeting, and the fact that we're unable to have a committee meeting, ad hoc committee meeting between now and then. But we can, I think better to drag it out this whole process and get it right the way that we have ownership and the members of the council buy into what we wind up deciding to do, especially since we have a pretty large new crew of folks on the council, than to rush and do something that we then find we need to change again soon.
so what groves would not be part of Trees for Tomorrow? Or is it just a describer of all the groves? I think that's what some of us kind of forget or struggle with understanding.
So right now, there, other than some of the landmark tree plantings that have been done historically, like the Tree Babies and the Tree Founders Tree Trust, most of the records I have of grove plantings or community plantings fall under the Trees for Tomorrow umbrella. And I think they maybe, when they developed that, had that in mind, that they would just kind of keep it under the one sort of program instead of, having, 2 dozen different names of historical plantings. But I'm not sure. And it doesn't really matter. It's just a matter of, figuring out how people want to organize it.
You should call it the Trees for Tomorrow canopy instead of the Trees for Tomorrow umbrella.
That's a great idea. That would be rooted in science, wouldn't it?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And so if we got rid of Trees for Tomorrow, it would just become the CTC groves, or right? I mean,
Well, that's kind of the problem, right? It's a little bit awkward when you want to start, showcasing partners. So it's a matter of which way you want it to be presented to the public.
Well,
it's just a way to brand, yeah.
And I like the name Trees for Tomorrow conveys something of significance, I think, and to the public, they're buying into the future of what the landscape's going to look like as we go forward. And I think that has a lot of selling value, perhaps, to donors and to the records keeping. For instance, as Rodney said, it wouldn't be wouldn't be a lot of different little, here are groves at schools, and here are groves at parks, and that sort of thing. But all of our grove efforts, regardless of what grants and what donors, what sponsors, what cooperators we had, perhaps could then all fall under that.
Yeah, I think that's the question. Is there anything we do that is outside of from under that canopy?
Well, if it doesn't involve planting of trees, in other words, if there are educational efforts,
Yeah. Okay.
in
If we do a tree fair or promotional activities or
I think another point there is the fact that it's the Trees for Tomorrow. It's, it's a community program. It's not just the community tree council. And that way we get more buy-in and people don't think it's like, oh, that's their thing to do. That way we bring the schools in, we bring, the other components into it, and people have that sort of buy-in to it, as opposed to it constantly being something the CTC has to be acting. And that way, if Timothy Road does some of the actions that Sean was talking about, that's perfectly fine. They're being a part of the solution, as opposed to the CTC having to do everything.
Sounds good. We and somebody mentioned the term clearinghouse, I think, and maybe that's a good way to look at it, or just a repository where we do wind up being the records keeper and trying to envision and generate participation from other cooperators.
I think it wouldn't hurt for this group to have like a CTC historian sort of position that's, that stays with the council, as opposed to making that be Rodney all the time. And it obviously changed. I think Rodney, I think anyone who was around when Billy was here knows the difference between Rodney and Billy. They focus on different things. Rodney's brought a lot of this back. That way, when Rodney gets, Trees Are of the United States job, we have someone else who has some of that knowledge still around, or something like that.
I appreciate that suggestion, Mark. There is so much historical information that a historian position would really benefit. I think not only the Tree Council, but the entire community.
Well, you probably do. Bob Barker,
Does that historian position have to be a member of the Tree Council, or just somebody that's appointed by the Tree Council?
Well,
It could easily be a member emeritus or someone, easily.
Yeah, right.
It's nice for historians to have a longer time limit than maybe just the 3 years.
Sure. Yeah, good point.
Continue that role. I don't know that would be a problem either, as long as they had an official or semi-official position on the council, so that it was a more official keeping of record. Rodney, I don't know when the dust is going to settle and things are going to smooth out, but I would enjoy sitting down with you, to the extent that my old non-computerized dinosaur brain would allow, and going through or trying to get a handle on a lot of this, and working on the beginnings of some kind of a grove history, at least. Now, I'm not suggesting or offering to be the historian for the council as a whole and everything that's transpired, but I would enjoy learning more and trying to sort it out in my own mind, what we have in the past and what we have going forward.
I'd be happy to share that the Trees for Tomorrow file has 846 megabytes of information in it.
wow.
Yeah, see, that doesn't even process with me. I don't know, how many pages is that?
It's a bunch.
Okay.
So with that in mind, we are out of time for the steering committee portion.
Great.
If I could say one more thing about the website, I will need I just need to check and make sure that the list that we have based on what I have from the old website and everything is comprehensive. So I hate to put more work on your plate, but if we could just make sure that I have that up to date. I'll check with you on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to work with anyone. It basically these records need to be gone through and organized in some sort of way. That's where the historian position would be helpful. And then the information gleaned out of them, because there's no one complete record anywhere. It needs to be researched and found. So I'm happy to work with people. I'm happy to share information, but I don't have time to do all of that.
No. Hopefully, once we get organized and it's all on the website, that the need for the historian, it won't be perpetual.
Well, at least it won't be playing catch up. Yeah, it'll be more like present and future rather than history. Yeah.
So I think our next meeting, guys, is the interview committee, and I know at least some of us are on that. I don't think you are, Mark, but is Pam still there?
What?
I think our next meeting is the interview meeting.
I'll see a few of you later.
Thanks.
Hi, Mark.
Great to see everybody again. So where are we, like what are the next steps in setting up the meeting? Is it advertising of it, or Bill had a great suggestion that we filter out the current members and recruit new ones, to make sure it's not the same people voting for and new candidates. I think that's a great idea, Phil. So what's the next step, guys? Any input?
I guess the question to me is, how do we populate this new working group with members? Are we going to solicit volunteers? Are we going to target individuals and try to recruit them to help us out? How's that going to work? I've got a dog that's driving me crazy.
According to the bylaws, the interviews are actually conducted by the executive committee. So if we follow the bylaws precisely, it would always be the executive committee.
Okay.
And you would get cycled through, except for Pam and myself. So I don't know if that works or not. Otherwise, so as far as steps, we just need to vote for the ad hoc interview committee to not exist anymore, and then to establish a work group. And then it's just a matter of establishing the advertising. All of this has to be done in conjunction with the mayor and commission office. The mayor and commission office needs to know what's going on with this. I have to keep Gene Spratland up to date with all information about members going out and members coming in and what that looks like. And then there's, of course, the process of getting it through the mayor and commission. So timeline, essentially, we should start advertising very soon. We should have members selected through our interview work group by December. And we should be sending that information on to the mayor and commission to appoint new members. It looks like they're most comfortable with receiving the CTC's recommendations in February, and then a possible March or April appointment. So I know that was a whole lot of information all at once, but there really are several steps involved. But the first step is to start advertising, and that advertisement should be official through the should also include the public information office.
I'm thinking that we were going to try to get everybody in place by the November meeting, but that's just a memory that I think I have.
Well, that would be nice if it's possible. If that's going to be the case, we're a little bit behind on making that happen.
Yeah.
Well, if it would seem if the January meeting was, I mean, obviously in the past we've not met during December. Maybe that'll change this year. But if we're going along past experience, and the January meeting were an okay meeting for us to get our final list approved by the entire council to put forward, then it would still be possible to get it to the mayor and commission by February, at which time they would then put it onto their agenda. So it seems like we could still get it done even if we didn't have them collected in November.
Yeah, maybe that I'm thinking November was for the officers for next year and not necessarily for the new members.
Yeah, I do think we've got an annual meeting or something like that that's supposed to take place in November where that happens.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. We're gonna call it a year-end meeting.
Yes.
Which will be different from the annual meeting. The annual meeting is where the CTC submits its annual report. And the year-end meeting, it'll be where the CTC gets ready for the upcoming year.
This is why we need a historian. Thank you, Rodney. I mean, recent historian. Well, I was sort of in and out, but what were you proposing something a few minutes ago, Rodney, about a change from the ad hoc interview committee that we have now back to the one that's on the books being the executive committee, or just doing away with the whole thing and going with an ad hoc working group? What were you proposing there?
Well, I think in some ways the simplest thing is to abolish is the wrong word, but discontinue the ad hoc interview committee, the working group concept. According to the CTC laws, the interviews are conducted by the executive committee, so it's already in place if that's what you all want to do. If you wanted to get more people involved, we could just create an interview committee of other people. It's up to you.
But isn't it right that, by making it more of a working group as opposed to the executive committee, bylaw arrangement, we don't necessarily have to have it a meeting channeled through the, what do you call it, public works or something like that? Like, can it be right that it could be more informal and then
public information.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So the mayor commission is always going to have to be informed. The information office needs to advertise the position publicly. So both of those groups need to be involved. So as the secretary, I will probably always have to be involved in this process just because there's a lot of steps. And so what I'm really talking about the difference between the group that's not the executive committee is Pam. Since Pam has been, an ongoing treasurer, she's here as well. It's tedious for her in that way. I don't know. But in my mind, that's the difference.
I think it helps to have a treasurer that has been around for a while, just to keep track of everything.
There's something definitely to be said about the continuity because it takes a while to learn this. And maybe, you know, the idea is that the executive committee are members that have more experience and understand the CTC a little bit more, understanding of what they may be looking for as far as membership.
That, to me, if that's what's on the books, then the executive committee is probably what we ought to be utilizing for this. And I was looking to replace myself with someone else anyway on this ad hoc interview committee, so I have no problem with that. Those of you who are on the executive committee may have a problem.
So if that were the case, it would be Sean, Pam, Pearl, and myself. But I know Joe's been really busy, so that may not work. I just don't know.
I'm fine with that.
Well, again, it seems like the executive committee has pretty broad powers and could, if need arose, could appoint a substitute or someone to complete the staff or the interviewing committee in a particular interview if need be. If that were a problem, or whatever, it seems like we could designate a proxy of some sort.
So here's one more thought. So the executive committee had to do quite a bit early this year because CTC wasn't able to meet enough, and then the COVID thing came up. In order to get the members and some of the other work done, the executive committee had to do it. But the executive committee could also, delegate to serve as a work group. It can go either through the CTC or the executive committee. It doesn't really matter. So it doesn't necessarily have to just be executive committee members, but whoever is in the work group has to report to somebody. In some ways, just by having this meeting, the executive committee, the steering committee, and the interview committee, we're doing that anyway, right? We're already doing it.
It does seem that way, yes.
I didn't hear anyone. We had a question about whether the interview would be happening, via Zoom meeting or online or in person. I think maybe we had one other member who might have been interested but wasn't sure because of the situation.
It would probably be a good idea.
At least we have to do Zoom or whatever.
It would probably be a good idea to maintain that, the online conference call or whatever arrangement until.
Right now.
So I guess the main question here is who takes up leadership on doing this? Who does it and how do they want to go about it? That's really the main question.
I wonder if there are any of the new members that might be interested. I think it might be less time consuming if we're doing it on Zoom. And I found it to take up a lot of my work time, honestly. Well, we have one spot to fill, so maybe that'll be a little different. I'm a little worried about being on it again. Overcommitting.
I like that idea, Mary. Like this is such complex process, really. I think it would be a good opportunity for a new member to kind of familiarize or dip their toes in the water, I guess you might say. And, you know, once again, feel part of the whole committee. And that was one thing I wanted to bring up in the steering committee meeting, is that, you know, once again, I want to make sure that everybody is on a team, I guess. I'm not sure if everybody has a job, so to speak, yet, or at least, you know, something to do other than, you know, attend the meeting, of course. So, and I guess we could bring that up in the next meeting if that's what you guys want to do. You know, looking for a chairperson.
So we wouldn't want to call them a chairperson. We'll just call it a work group leader.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that if that's the easiest, but I'm also happy to work with whoever wants to be involved. I will need to be involved as far as coordinating with the Mayor and Commission Office and the Public Information Office.
If we put something out to announce that we're looking for a person to fill this position on social media, I want to make sure that we have that wording right. And I don't know who to ask about that. I know that we ran an ad on the radio, and if I don't know if Rodney, if you're the best person to ask, or if we have some sort of a statement that would be somewhat concise.
I think I have the
Put it
record.
on Facebook, but I think it would be good to be consistent across all.
I think I have the records of the past advertisements for it. We just don't want to advertise until we've let the Public Information Office know that that's what we're, I'm sorry, until we let the Mayor and Commission Office know that that's what we're doing.
And that'll happen when?
Whenever we decide, whenever whoever's going to be the leader kind of takes charge and gets things rolling.
Right. And we did, I did have to leave the room for a second, but I think I heard you say that we want to start advertising fairly soon.
Yes, we're probably behind on that process. It would have been better to be advertising early in the year, so we'll want to start as soon as possible.
Membership of the council now, asking if anyone is willing to step forward and take leadership of the newly formed interview working group. I understand Rodney's got some things that he has to do, and therefore it wouldn't require someone else to learn how to handle that. But the interview questions, there's a pamphlet or a list of those potential questions. That they can be revised, of course, but there's that, and there's fairly good guidance as to what would need to be done, other than what Rodney has to do through public information. And also, it doesn't seem like it would be an onerous task, maybe the setting up of the Zoom meetings or whatever for the interviews might be, but by and large, it seems like it would be a fairly straightforward position.
So in the past, much of that it can be done by the president. We're going to have to move on because it's 1 o'clock. But basically, the steps that have to happen is it has to be decided that it's going to be advertised for new members. And the Mayor and Commission Office has to be notified that will be this many open positions and that it will be advertising. And then the Public Information Office needs to be involved in putting the information out publicly through the ACC information system. Then the CTC has to vote. The interview committee has to conduct interviews and decide on their choices. They need to make recommendations to the CTC, who then needs to vote and approve those recommendations. That recommendation then needs to be forwarded to the mayor and commission office, and put onto the agenda setting session for the mayor and commission. And that's where I come into play. I do the communication with the mayor and commission's office and with the public information office. So there are about 8 major steps involved. I'll go ahead and put it on the agenda, that the interview, we'll vote to not be an ad hoc committee, and instead we'll change to a work group, and then we'll ask if someone is interested in taking the leadership role in that. We'll need 3 or 4 people to do it. And I do think they could be voting members as well.
I would say targeting the leadership role person to be targeted would first be best someone who has been on the council more than just coming on right now, but hasn't stepped up into a committee leadership role yet. That might get someone a little more active that's not right now. I don't know. Just a thought.
Okay. So looks like our time. Go ahead. Sorry, Rodney.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just going to say we should have voted to adjourn all 3 of those meetings, but we should vote to adjourn.
Consider it done.
Thank you all.
I vote. Thanks, guys.
And the next is the promotions committee meeting. I'm just going to turn off my camera, and I'll join back in an hour.
Thank you. Will do. Me too.
Hi, everybody. Tori, are you there?
Hi, yes, I'm here. Sorry, I'm had a busy morning, so I'm eating lunch and didn't want to have to
No,
make
it's
y'all watch
fine.
me.
I was just scarfing mine down too. I just you're welcome to finish that and stay on mute. I'm trying to get a hold of Jesse and Joe to see if they're able to join us today, but I'll just review what we talked about if they don't pop on here in a sec.
Okay, great.
Okay, I'll just go over a few things to anybody that's listening right now. It looks like Jesse is unable to join us, and I haven't heard anything from Joe. And Tori, if you are interested in being a part of this committee, we would absolutely love to have you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see here. And I was out of town for our last council meeting, and I was so pleased that Jesse was able to step in and that we got those donation levels. I'm looking at my other screen, which has our minutes from our last committee meeting. And I was just going to, and I didn't send Rodney an updated agenda for this little committee meeting. So I just wanted to go through it and check off what we've gotten done and talk about what we've talked about in the steering committee and the executive committee meetings that pertain to promotions. And so I will keep minutes for this as we go. Get a fresh sheet of paper. Drop my pen. Sorry. Okay. So we have gotten the donation levels for individuals and sponsors. And we were kind of struggling whether to call our corporate donors or sponsors. So I think that's something that we could work on. Do you see any pros and cons of referring to one over the other?
Not immediately offhand. I feel like I hear the term sponsors more often, and I don't know if that would distinguish them from individuals if we're also calling like individuals donors. So it may just be easier to distinguish between the two, but I don't, other than that right offhand, I don't really see a difference.
I like it too. And we can take it before the whole council if Jesse or Joe doesn't pop on. So that's great. We have gotten the logos updated. You know, we had that cityscape logo and we needed to put the entire name under it, and we have gotten that completed. So that's great. Jessie said she was going to try to get to putting those on the actual website and going ahead and putting our smaller logo on social media this week. So I haven't heard anything from the artist who's made this great sketch of the tree that owns itself in hopes of doing that as a gift for larger donations. But I think we've all kind of gone round and round, and think that a really nice thank you note, and if we get any promotional materials, and especially if we have some of the seedlings from the tree that owns itself, that would make a nice gift. But I still think we can keep our eyes peeled for something that would be nice. Okay. So we are hoping to have that website even a little further along by our next meeting in August. Jessie did set up the PayPal account, and so she can put a link to that on the web page. One of the things we felt like our website needed was a page just to describe kind of the previous sites that we've worked on, all the previous groves we've done, and if what grants helped us get there, or what donations helped us get there, and how many trees were planted, and maybe even what species, and then also what we have coming down the pipe, or what areas we're looking at and what we're interested in. And I think that would be great, kind of a clearinghouse. And what I'm getting from Rodney is that our records are a mess. He inherited files and files, a file for the trees that owns, not trees that owns, trees for tomorrow. And it has so much information in it. He almost needs like a historian to go through, and and we all kind of giggled, but then we actually talked about, like, is somebody willing to take this on and go through it? And it may end up being me, just because I would like to have that if we end up putting all that on the web page. And then, really, if we get it really well organized, it would help whoever comes in after us keep that straight. Just have one place where we go to look at all that. So I'm going to try to get with him and see if we can sort through that, unless it's something you're interested in. But
yeah, if that's something that can be divvied up, or with the judicial emergency in place right now, my job has really slowed down.
Okay.
And we're teleworking unless we have court scheduled, so it's 90% of the time I'm working from home. So it's definitely something I can help with.
Oh, awesome. Okay, that's great. So I'll follow up with Rodney and we'll see if he can just put all that in a zip file, a zip drive or something, and share it with us, and we can start to piece it together and kind of organize it in a way. I mean, I guess it would make sense to have a more detailed version that we all have access to, and then have a consolidated, the public doesn't have to see necessarily everything that's in that file. And then once we get working on it, we can decide, should we put a link on the web page that goes to like a table or like a Google Sheet or something if it's not very presentable, or but I think that donors would love to see actually what we've done and what we're trying to do. So that directly relates to us. And then the other thing was we are going to need to advertise for that open position. And so we'll need to put out a statement on social media, advertise, and we should start doing that sort of immediately. So Rodney was going to share with me the exact wording. We put out an ad on how did you find out about the position, by the way?
One of my coworkers, Paige Otwell, told me.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Paige is awesome.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I think it is word of mouth, but there is something that goes out on the radio. And I think I would like to see that exact wording so that we can use a portion of it, so that for consistency's sake on Instagram and Facebook. And I want to make sure that we have our updated logo. That has just been sitting dormant. We have not been posting because the logo is out of date. So we want to start putting up a post every couple of weeks. And that's a good way to start, kind of announcing our logo, announcing our new website, and then announcing this position. Okay, let's see. Another thing that's exciting, and I think this was talked about during the meeting last week, but we were talking about just doing away with the Trees for Tomorrow concept, because everybody, I don't know if you feel this way, but it was sort of confusing. Like there were some projects that were not under the Trees for Tomorrow money, and then there were some projects that were. And now that it's the Carl Jordan trail, the Firefly Trail was primarily what all that funding is. So we were thinking that we would just sort of dissolve it and just have one operations budget once that's done. And but then we started thinking that we really actually like that name, and that gives our whole tree planting process a name, because there are some other things that we are going to start trying to do in the realm of education, and maybe we used to have a tree fair, and we can do that. But whenever we talk about Trees for Tomorrow, it would imply planting trees in these groves. And we really want to get back into the schools, or not just the schools, but planting trees around playgrounds. One thing I thought about that relates to promotions was, shoot, if we keep that branding, do we need some sort of a logo for that? Like it would look kind of cool to have. A lot of times it's capital T, lowercase f, capital T, Trees for Tomorrow. Or if maybe I could ask Hope to use one of the other logos she came up with that we didn't vote on, as sort of a symbol to use for that Trees for Tomorrow. That was just a idea that but we don't want too many of these things floating around,
Mm-hmm.
But I think that we could probably just use our Athens Tree Council logo with the oak leaf and just write out in a font, a nice font, Trees for Tomorrow. But anyway, that whole clearinghouse page on the website would pretty much just be Trees for Tomorrow page and describing what it is we do in that realm. And then I think it is worth having a page on the website for education, even though we've been pretty non-existent in the last few years, but there were some really amazing things that were done in the schools, and that planting trees around playgrounds in the schools would kind of directly relate to be a good opportunity to get the kids out. It's kind of funny, this promotions committee has a little bit to do with all these other committees. It's there's always this underlying component of raising money and getting the word out about what we do in every single realm. So it's kind of nice. I feel like I'm serving on most of the committees, but I think, we definitely need to have our finger on the pulse of everything that's happening, because at the end of the day, they're going to ask us about what's going on. Okay. Another page on the website is going to have a carbon offset calculator, which I think is really cool. And one of the ways we are thinking about asking for money is to business like the company that my husband works for. They are on the road all the time. They have a project in Ohio. They have more local stuff too, like Georgia Tech. And I think it's a way to ask for money. Like if you're, just to offset your carbon footprint, as an organization, to go ahead and donate to us. And so that would be, so I want to follow up with Joe about that. And okay, that's about it. But I think one more thing that I have talked to Joe Perloff and Jesse about is I've drafted, it needs some work. I need to work on it this week. But I would like to get y'all a finalized or draft of a letter that we can use to send out to individuals, maybe people we all know that we think might be interested in donating to the council. In addition to what we'll be doing, blasting social media and sharing our website on our own social media platforms. I think that may be a good way to start, and just reaching people that may not be on social media. I'm trying to make it sort of, parts of the letter that I've started were somewhat personal, kind of like, because there are a lot of clients of mine in my gardening business. And I feel pretty confident that a lot of my clients would donate to the Tree Council, but I think we could make it so that we could tweak it and use it in different, and to different people, depending on how familiar we are with them. And then also tweak it to be for companies and corporations in addition to individuals. So maybe just, I'll make it so that we can share it, but anybody on the council really, because we all are in this on fundraising, could use it and tweak it a little bit to share, send out to people. So by the next council meeting, I hope to have that letter finalized and be actively posting on Facebook and Instagram with our new logos, and have the website finished. And then the last thing I have is coordinating with Rodney to get that Trees for Tomorrow file so that we can work on that page on the website. Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's good. Jessie has been doing so much, this is really falling on her, and she's going to have to keep working on the website. So anything that, one of the things that Sean was talking about is that he does hope for the new members to have chosen the committee to be a part of. So I am not sure, maybe I can summon Rodney to make it official if you would like to be on the promotions committee. Is this the one? Okay, great. Make sure that your name's added to, did y'all discuss this in the council meeting last week?
No, not anything.
Assigning new members to committees. Okay. Well, great. So then just between me and you, I guess I would just follow up with, I'll include you on an email to Rodney about getting that file.
Okay.
And that would be the best thing. And then you and I can just communicate about how to sort through this information in some way. I think a lot of it goes way back to when the council was first started, but just, and then maybe we can even talk on the phone just about how to, what information we want from each project. You know, like where the money came from, what trees were planted, where it was planted, you know. So I think we need to see the information first before we can really decide what we pick and choose.
Yeah, it sounds like we could pretty easily assemble that into like a shared Google Sheets or something too.
Yeah, and maybe if it is in like a table form like that, that would help us keep it, you know, organized and concise. Yeah. Okay, well, great. That's all I got. It's good to see you.
You too. Yeah, thanks for running through that.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to mute myself again and finish my lunch until the next meeting. What's next? Let's see. 2 policy committee meeting and then education. Okay, great. I'll be in touch.
Okay, thanks, Mary.
Bye.
Bye.
How's it going, Joseph?
Doing good. How are you?
Good.
Sean, you been climbing in the tree?
I'm sorry?
You've been climbing in the tree?
I haven't done that in a while. I managed to do it like once every 3 or 4 months, maybe. If I'm lucky. Most of what I do is drive around and run a business. So we have really capable and skilled climbers better than I ever was, really. So that puts me out of the field pretty much all the time. How about you? How are things going?
I hear it's a rush. Well, actually, I've been up in a tree and cut.
What's that? Say that again.
I said I hear climbing up.
Sorry, you cut out there for a second, Joseph. Sorry.
Yeah. Are you having trouble hearing me?
It's kind of in and out. Yeah.
I wonder if calling in would help. This has been a problem at times with the WebEx. We'll see. We'll see how it goes.
It's better now for whatever. I'm not sure why, but yeah. Hey Jim, how's it going?
I'm fine, thank you. How you doing?
Good. Hi Lee. Mark.
Sean, you can hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Rodney and I talked about, I had problems with my microphone last week. I don't know what the heck's going on. I ordered a new desktop anyhow.
Got it.
Okay, you guys ready for a policy committee meeting?
We are.
All right, so I seem to be less and less organized by the day. What I'm kind of looking for is some of the past meeting suggestions that have been discussed before. And I think they appear in the tree council minutes, and I don't think I made it into the policy committee agenda. So what I was thinking about for today is to finish. We had basically started talking about process, and then we started talking about some specific things that people would like to see changed in the tree ordinance. And that list is what I'm kind of scanning for right now. We talked about most of them. I think there was one last item that we didn't have a chance to talk about very much. Does anyone remember what that was?
I don't, sorry.
That's okay. Give me 1 second. I just need to bring up the tree council meeting minutes, and then we can go from there. Apologize for that.
Lee, I reviewed the, that attachment you sent, and that I think will be really helpful.
Okay. We can use it however it helps, if it helps.
I think that's a great guide. I think a lot of those questions have probably been answered, in the current ordinance we have. But I think it's a good jumping off point.
Yeah, in the agenda that Rodney sent before, there's a lot of really good questions too. Some very pointed things to think about.
So that work was done before. I have actually another list. I was looking through the records on the history, basically all the steps that transpired and establishing the tree ordinance to begin with. And there's a pretty good list. I mean, a lot of this work has already been done. So basically, I want to caution you against trying to reinvent the wheel here. List that we sent, I saw is okay, but I don't see it as necessarily fitting Athens real well. And I also see it as asking questions that may not best be addressed by an ordinance change. Something that I would like to urge you all to keep in mind is just because you make a rule doesn't mean that it's possible to implement that rule. That's one of the problems we're already running into from the county's perspective, as far as resources to be able to carry out what's already in place. There can be a lot of improvements on that. It really comes down to resources available on how well that gets done. The more that gets added to it is going to be more stuff. There may be limitations on resources for it. So that's one thing I'd like you to keep in mind. Just because you make a rule doesn't mean that you affect change. Change requires several things, and the rules are only part of the picture. So I think the list is fine, but I don't think it necessarily fits Athens. And I think many of the items on there could be accomplished in a more efficient and effective way. So that's my 2 cents about it. Okay, so possible changes. And I just can't find that list right now. I'm going to have to come back to that. I don't think it matters too much unless somebody has an urgent need to discuss one more items. They were basically things like modifying the single family residential loophole. There was someone had said something about wanting to require median trees. There was a list, and we can come back to that list. I don't think it's necessarily important for the meeting today. So one of the things that we need to figure out is what is needed and why. And in order to really do that well, it requires some data, and that means community feedback. There are different levels of community feedback, and I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen a little bit. But basically, there's a continuum on community involvement. You can inform the community, you can consult with the community, and that's essentially what the Tree Council does on a basic level. This is sort of like a lower level tier of approach in eliciting community feedback. And it does miss a few things. The next level up is to involve the community, and that's working directly with them. And that's where deliberative processes come to play. So what I'm urging this committee to consider is doing a better job at eliciting the community feedback. So that would involve stakeholder meetings or other deliberative processes. By doing that, we would be able to gather data, information about what community members want and why they want it. With that information, we would then be able to carry that to the mayor and commission and have a conversation about that. But also be able to have conversations about the feasibility of implementing those changes, whatever they may be. I think it would be a mistake to just assume that we know what is best for the entire community. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on that. And what I thought we might do today is a mini deliberative process or a mini stakeholder feedback assessment. So I have an exercise in mind for all of us, but before I do, I want to ask if anyone else has anything they would like to add or say about any of this.
Rodney, I was just a thought. In the process, in the world that I came from, in the process of getting a client to fully understand the product and then ask the right questions about it, there's always a process. There's always, and when I say the right questions, it's the questions that are paramount in their minds, not necessarily in ours. Was an educative process, this deliberative process that you're talking about. Educating people about trees then gives them the ability to ask the questions that are important to them, because there's a lot of unknowns. We all know that they're decorative. We all know that they help the environment, but why? And why shouldn't you cut that tree down? And why is it important? And how does it impact you personally or your neighbor? I mean, it's just the whole process of educating people, because I think people take the canopy that we have here in Athens, most people take it for granted, and it'll always be there, and that someone else is looking out for it. And then you have the right-of-way crews come through and completely take down a whole area of trees because of utility right-of-ways, and you've got incensed people, and they don't understand why they weren't consulted. They don't understand what happened. And that's just one example. I'm just saying that there's a lot of things we can do to educate the community. And I suppose that goes arm in arm. Trying to create policy comes out of good education, a good sound policy that we have a good input from the community would go hand in hand with our education undertakings.
Yes, Jim, I appreciate that. And that's really a crucial aspect of it. Done well, these deliberative process would have a component of that, an educational component. It could be, you know, the facilitator could talk about tree benefits, you know, just to start the conversation. But I absolutely agree with you. The education is a crucial aspect, and it's needed on all fronts for sure. And thank you for that input on that.
Hey, Rodney, you know, I'm all for process and including the community. I mean, I think we all are. And I guess the question is what, you know, what level code changes would need input from the community? I mean, if the intent of the code is clearly already laid out, and then we find there's certain small aspects of the code that aren't really helping meet that intent, do we still want to engage the community, or is that something? I mean, we could do a smaller review fixing tiny little glitches now, and then look at the bigger code issues, because the only bigger code issue I've really heard that's come up has been the single family ordinance, the single family conserved canopy requirement. I'm not sure. I mean, tree bank perhaps could be considered a significant change. And then, you know, I've wanted to see street trees required in the downtown area, and maybe that, I think that one would be it would be valuable to get stakeholder feedback there. But I don't know, what are there other larger issues that you see perhaps needing more community input?
It depends on who you ask. So that's a great point, Joe. So I get a ton of phone calls from from property owners' neighbors who want me to be able to come and tell their neighbor that they have to cut down their tree. Like, I get a lot of phone calls for that, more than you would think. So if I were to tell you what I think the community wants, that would be one of the things. But I don't know that. I would rather gather information to have a more, a more scientific approach, less opinion, more just, gathering information. I don't want to advocate for making it easier to remove trees. I know that some municipalities have that in their ordinance. We do not. As far as the smaller changes, this committee has approved some editing changes, and that has been forwarded. And I think in August, that's going to be going to go through the Planning Commission and sent to the Mayor and Commission for recommendations for changes. So really the larger issues, and I'm glad you brought them up, the tree bank, the single family residential, there's a couple other ones. So this is kind of what our group here thinks. And I think we need to engage in gathering more information from more people. And I would like to dedicate part of this meeting today to actually going through a mini process to first of all get information from this group, and second of all to help people in this group become familiar with at least one type of process that could be employed in gathering information. Does anybody else have any other thoughts? Okay, you want to move on with a little process?
Sounds great.
All right. Now, we actually already did this once, but we're going to do it again. But this time it's going to be a little more structured. And essentially, I'm going to ask everybody to get out a piece of paper or type on your computer or whatever you like to do. And I want you to think about what it is when it comes to Athens Community Forest, what you want and why. What you want and why. And in 5 minutes, I know that's not much time, but write that down in as thoughtful of a way as you can. You guys all set?
Yep.
Okay, so I did find the list. What happened is when we transferred to doing all the committee meetings all together, minutes are in the group committee minutes. So they weren't in the policy committee meeting minutes because of that switch. What I would like to do is just everybody to take a few minutes to read what it is you want and explain why it is. And I'm going to ask you to keep a record of this and send it to me. And by doing that, we'll have collected some data. So who wants to start? Joe, if I just go in order, you're the first person on my screen.
All right. I'll read what I wrote. A healthy and diverse collection creates canopy in urban, suburban, and rural areas that citizens of Athens respect and cannot imagine living without. Community forest that is densely distributed throughout Athens, so visitors could not deny Athens' value and appreciation for our trees. Who's next, Rodney? I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Lee's up next.
Okay, I got a continuous connected canopy that provides benefits for people and wildlife. I'd like to see the overall canopy increase rather than decrease. I'd like it more evenly spread around so that there's some everywhere and that spreads the benefits out to other places and people. I would like to see more protection for landmark trees, even if they are in single-family residential spots. And then consistent with that, I'd just like more protection for SFR trees.
Awesome. Thank you. Sean, you're up next.
Yeah, mine is pretty brief, really, but I would like to make it more restrictive to remove trees on properties of 1 acre or less. My motivation is to, 1, preserve the urban forestry canopy, and 2, require more collaboration between contractors, the builders, and arborists.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate that. Jim, you're up.
Well, mine's more about, I live in a neighborhood where we're almost all water oak, and there's not enough diversity. There was some pine here, so I wrote diversity to protect against the very same problems the timber industry suffers from in a monoculture. I know that we sometimes don't have a lot of control over what developers do. They have a tendency to clear cut everything and then plant individual trees on properties, but enabling them to select a diverse range of trees for their plantings. I know cost is always a limiter, but I really think that, I mean, I've got an acre of land, and almost all of it is the water oak, and every 6 weeks I contribute the most giant pile of limbs to the city. And if we had a more diverse tree population in here, I wouldn't have such a constant mess. And it's more than likely because that's what was planted 30 years ago. You know.
Great. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. Mark, you're up.
So I've got a few things that are fairly similar to what's already been said. Connected forests to provide viable stands for wildlife. Lee mentioned people as well in that same regard. I guess I'll throw people in there as well. I just think we don't do a good enough job of making areas that we protect actually connect to one another, which I think would be simpler task with subdivisions and some commercial developments. Passive protected green space, providing protected areas for the future. I know there's some of that going on, and it's becoming a bigger trend out of the sustainability office. Continue supporting that. And then the next 2 points kind of go hand in hand: trees in areas that will remain protected and safe for property owners, along with better understanding of spatial allowance in commercial development and urban settings. I see a lot of trees get planted just in extra space that's really not that great for a tree, just to meet some numbers. I wish there was a way to make that actually a little bit better. In fact, I would advocate for some sort of lowering of the standard to get better trees in better places and long-term health of those trees that I'm sure a landscape architect could probably, better inform me about. It's not my strong suit in knowing that. I just kind of see it on plans, and it kind of doesn't really always work out, even though it looks nice in plan view. Better soil for long-term tree health. And then along with what Jim was saying, make more trees get planted. And I guess by more, I meant more diversity. I know I spoke to this group about taking a field trip out to some of our growers and nurseries around and talking to them. And I haven't been able to do that. And it's every single review I do of plans, I feel more and more about the fact that, there's 100 plus trees in our tree species list, and I see 8 or 12 of them, 4 or 5 of them every single project, 8 or 12 of them in the total of all the projects, a few really high-end projects where, either they've got a lot of trees and so they've got a little bit more diversity in there, or it's just got enough money that, they're actually doing that. So I'd really like to know that picture a little bit more and be able to turn that back around onto the design community and let them know. And even further, that goes down to, contractors and subcontractors. So that educational component of that.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. So the thing that I would like to see is a high quality urban forest that reduces costs and risks and increases the benefits over time. And basically what this means is properly planted trees, well-maintained trees, and diversity of species, age, and size. And so these are sort of the quality aspects. And I learned something, basically you guys helped me to remember the importance of connectivity and also the importance of soils. I would also like to see a community that is well educated about trees and who will support the urban forest by more adequately funding urban forest maintenance and in celebrating tree benefits. And the reason I would like to see these things is because it will improve the quality of life for Athens-Clarke County residents. It will enhance health and well-being. It will foster a sense of place and community. It will increase community pride. It will provide a more enjoyable environment by creating cooler temperatures and more aesthetically pleasing surroundings. And I could add to that list of benefits, right? There's economic benefits, there's ecosystem services, the benefits go on and on. We could talk about the benefits for probably 3 hours straight and not even cover it all. So that was awesome. I would really like to ask each one of you to send me an email of your list of what you want and why. And what I will do is I will put this into a table and we will have generated our first set of data. Just want to ask you all, well, first of all, I just want to let you all know by listening to you, one of the things that became very clear to me is that we all kind of want the same things, but in a little bit different ways, right? And I also kind of realized, or maybe I knew this anyway, but it helped to reaffirm that we have much more things in common in what we want than we have in differences. So there's an opportunity here for mutual gains benefits, right? We can create these win-win situations by learning from each other and then building upon on the consensus aspects of what we all want. I would love to hear from each one of you about what you learned or what you noticed about this process.
Well, I'll go. I noticed that it was interesting how we approached it differently in terms of, well, I want to see this, I want more of this, and I want more of this. But then I forgot whose it was. Was it Mark's list was not approaching it that way? It was, and I'm not even sure that it was Mark. But it approached it from the other side of here's more how to accomplish it and the specifics of it. I like that many of us mentioned the connectivity, and I forgot about putting soil in there. I really do want to see some soil standards in a tree ordinance. So I'm going to sneak that into my list. Okay, that's all.
Thank you.
I think what I heard was people, and this kind of goes back to Joseph's comment. I think it was a very valid point he made before we began this exercise, is that I would really like to know how we're going to get good information out of the public. The things I heard here sound like things that people who know a little bit more about trees are going to state. And I think it's important that if we are going to, I've just been reading a lot about feedback and how terrible it's done on a regular basis with municipal operations. And not that I discount the public's input at all. I just think it's one of those really tough things to get. You get the two ends of the spectrum. You get, in this case, tree people or people who have had trouble with trees. And so I think it's really important that we understand a little bit more about how to garner that if we're going to go through that exercise, because I think it can certainly be valid, but if not done well, we're kind of wasting our time. And as a tree council, we're the people they've decided to go out and try and help those changes get made. So that's just kind of my 2 cents. I just want to make sure as we move forward we keep all that in mind, because I think that's really important.
That's well said, Mark, and I think really valid. One of my initial thoughts is that you just record the information, and then the areas where the community has consensus are the areas where it makes more sense to focus on them. But you are right. You could get a wild amount of stuff, and you could potentially get information or feedback that you really don't want to hear. That's possible, especially for instance, if you had a large representation of the building community show up at these meetings.
Rodney, there really was a nice spread of thoughts about cultural values, and then aesthetics, and then practical issues, cost. I think we hit the whole spectrum of things that would seemingly be relevant to the conversation. I don't have a feeling for where the public would come from, and like you say, it's all based on audience and probably locale. If you hold the meeting off of Atlanta Highway, you're going to get people who are saying, "Why aren't there more trees?" And I think it just all depends upon where you take the feedback from, and what avenue of communication you use, and the location of that feedback. So, but I think we did a really cool job as far as covering the spectrum of things that are impactful to us.
Thank you, Jim, and that's a great point. And I don't think you can necessarily do this well with only one meeting. Like, you might want to consider something like having this kind of a meeting in each and every single district. Or, it would have to be something that is systematic, that covers as much ground as possible and is thoughtful in its process. So there would be a lot to consider just in that, right? Just in the logistics of setting something like that up.
Concerning this exercise, I always enjoy, these questionnaires because you get to hear different people's perspectives, and I agree we need everybody's kind of perspective to get a holistic solution. I think we've got a good code and ordinance as it is, and I think, but we want to take it to the next level, and I think a lot of people in Athens are ready to see it improve. So. And then as far as the public involvement, and you said you had access to like some of the documents and some of the feedback that helped shape the original code. Is that something we could look at as well? As I know, at one point I remember Larry Morris talking about a survey and a questionnaire they did at some of these community outreaches, and he was always shocked to find that the number one place that Athens wanted trees was on the streets, that it wasn't even the schools and it wasn't even parks. And so anyways, I don't know if we have any of those records as well, just to even begin to see what questions we've asked in the past to help formulate any further discussion.
I have a tree ordinance file, and the amount of information on it's still coming up. There's 430 megabytes in the file that I have on the county side, and then on the tree council side, there's another file where they did some tree ordinance work. There's quite a history. Much of it is just the drafts they wrote. They wrote probably 24 drafts between the fall of 2004 and June of 2005 when it was approved by the mayor and commission. So there was an enormous amount of work that went into it, and it's interesting to see it. It's also pretty overwhelming. I haven't specifically seen the feedback documents. It doesn't mean they're not in there, but I just haven't seen them yet. Maybe Larry has them. If he does, it would be helpful to get them. I would have to, yeah, I mean, this is available. I would have to look at it, and I want to be careful about releasing information that I don't have permission to release. So I'd have to look at it from that perspective before doing so. But there is a great deal of information here. Thank you for that, Joe. That was great. Sean, what did you think?
So I had to step out for a moment, and are we still talking about the our thoughts on the can you remind me? I had to step out for a second. Can you remind me what we were talking about?
Yeah, I'm just asked everybody to speak a little bit to this little exercise we did, and what your impressions, what you learned from it, or what your impressions were about the exercise.
Well, I think my recognition was that we are very much in line with each other's interests and what we want for the community, and I think it's no coincidence that we're on in the same group, like we're like-minded, and so I think it's definitely a valuable activity, and I can definitely see the complications involved in that. My question is like, how do we disseminate the data, or like what would be if they're I'm not sure like how that would look, or what the next steps would be, getting it out there, if that would be whatever. But anyway, so I guess I don't have a whole lot to add, but valuable activity summarization.
Okay, thank you, Sean. So this is an interesting process, and it's one, this type of process is where I have learned the most by far about community and urban forestry. It's mind-blowing when you start sort of pulling the the community knowledge, the local knowledge. There's a lot out there that we as experts may not be aware of. And it's a great way to learn and to not only increase in our own capacity, but it's, excuse me, it's an opportunity to help increase the capacity of the community, and also an opportunity to do some education and outreach at the same time. So it's a lengthy process, it's labor intensive, it's very involved, it can be messy and really frustrating. And in the end, it's if you're able to afford the time and energy to do it, the outcome is one that you can't really beat. So, you know, it's that assessment, you know, benefits versus cost. You know, how much are we able to invest in this, and what's the benefit at the end? And I guess we don't know. What I've done in the past is I just record everything, and then display that, like just, you know, in the reports, just show all the data, but then also doing a summary that shows the overlap, that shows the areas where people seem to line up, you know, that where there's consensus in what the community wants. And in that, and then that begins to inform the areas that we may be able to focus on and get some traction with. Ultimately, you could pay a private firm a lot of money to do something like this. This is not a small task. So I just, you know, in this exercise, one of the things I wanted to do is just show you what it feels like. You know, for me, when I've done this and I start seeing that there's more, you know, there's more similarities than there are differences, it begins to create an environment where it's easier to work together. It's also easier to become a little bit more excited about it and a little more enthusiastic. So it can have a tendency of generating energy. It can also, when things don't go well, can be really demoralizing. So it can be either or, it just depends. Okay, so do you want to return to the list that we've generated so far, or what do you got? How do you all want to proceed from here? What do you want to talk about? Let me just put this list up and let you guys take a look at it. I'll make sure this gets into our minutes and gets recorded and move, you know, and is kept up with the records as we move forward from here. Okay, can you all see this?
There looks to be some secret redacted stuff on there.
I can unredact that. That's basically the information that I recorded from my very first meeting, and it's really just the same list written in a different way, but I'll light it up for you. I just don't want to get confused. I don't want to write the same thing twice in the record.
So would the idea to be to put some type of survey out there, or gather info while we discuss some of the other things we've talked about in the past, or what does that look like in your mind, Rodney?
You know, at this point, it just becomes a matter of choice and direction. You know, it almost seems to me to make some sense. It makes sense to me to do some homework and start looking at what's been done in the past, so that we don't end up repeating the work that was done by the Tree Council in 2004 and 2005, really. So maybe looking at some of those old records might be a good place to go. I can't see everybody, but I'm going to go ahead and change the screen. Is everybody done looking at this list? One of the questions I had was how many people so far in this committee have read the tree ordinance? Has everybody read it?
I did, but I read it for school. I still read it.
Good.
Most of it, yeah. Rodney, can you email that list to us?
I will, yes. Do you want it right now or?
Sure. Thanks.
Bear with me.
A couple of things on the list. I noticed that the street sections, planting street trees in the verge keeps in that list. I mean, that's something I personally would love to see. You know, all the benefits of the tree. They're in the verge. You know, 10 feet off the right of way, and somebody and not really providing much benefit in the public realm. But we probably could remove them from our list because I mean that really is more like a public works. You know, I mean we couldn't enforce trees necessarily being in the verge. I guess we could, right? It's going to be a lot more of an uphill battle if public works wasn't on board. And I know, like, through Athens in Motion, recommendations for future street sections, you know, they show all their graphical document. Anyways, moved from this list. I mean, what it is, bank. I think downtown should be discussed in detail. So then the single residential, the loophole there. Not sure what incentives are, and then the size of tree. I remember what that discussion was about. Conserved trees, making sure that we attempt to conserve trees. 12-inch caliber. Anyways, just some thoughts there.
Okay. Thank you. You were kind of cutting in and out, so I had a hard time hearing you, but I think I got the gist of what you were saying. I just need to apologize. This list is, I just had to find it real fast and find what I could and throw it on the screen. It's not really well crafted, which speaks to the amount of work that goes into trying to just, you know, do a real, you know, a small meeting, let alone a large stakeholder meeting type of a situation. But if I understand what you said correctly, you said I could go ahead and remove the item about wanting to require tree planting on the verge, or did I misunderstand that?
Yeah, no, that was correct. You know, I was saying that really a public work, Athens and collaboration there. I think to require that right now, I mean, it just can't even be done. Overlapping with some of the other codes out there.
Right. You know, to be honest, I personally think that much of what we want can be done through the implementation of a tree management plan. And I think, so I keep coming back to that, you know, that the ordinance is sort of some of the nuance of you know, this ongoing document which represents the community as a whole and how it has formalized, you know, how it's going to create some rules about its trees. And the tree management plan is a different thing that that really kind of sets up a series of goals, and then can start creating some measurements toward the achievement of those goals, and can sort of build in some accountability into the management of the urban forest. So I know they're apples and oranges, and I can't help but think that, you know, it might be time for the policy committee to think about a new chair. I don't know how much further I can take the policy committee necessarily. I mean, I can collect data, I can do that, but I can't really become political. So I'm limited in what I'm able to do in working with the community. I have to stay within the role of my position. So I can collect data, I can help facilitate, you know, some processes, but I can't really, you know, create a campaign, if that makes sense. So, you know, I'm able to speak, you know, I'm able to educate, I'm able to create PowerPoints, I'm able to collect data. I would love, you know, write reports, and would really love to be able to start collecting some quality information to share to the mayor and commission, so that they have, and to the county managers, so they have the ability to make good decisions, you know, based on good information. So it's something to think about. You know, I'm not quitting or anything just yet, but I just wonder how far I can, you know, I think that the data collection is critical and really important, and I'm happy to help with that. It's also a monumental task, and I am limited in what I'm able to do, and as we all are, you know, and so coming up with a game plan, I guess, is the next step. And maybe before we do that, it might be worthwhile just to, for me to put together this file. This file is so huge, you can't share it online. My system won't let me email it out or anything. So, you know, just finding a way to get this information to everybody and have everybody take a look at it, and see what has transpired in the past, I think would be really helpful. Because there's a lot to it.
Ronnie, I've got a question. If we do undertake some changes, if we as a committee decide that, yes, we do want to have the public hearings and we want to undergo this very painful but hopefully rewarding process, would it be the policy committee that's really in charge of it and therefore you? Or would it be the larger council and therefore not you?
Well, I think the chances are it would go up to other committees pretty quickly. I don't think it would just stay here in the tree council policy committee. I think it would likely involve a lot of other things. One of my points was that, you know, we really need to consider the broad, you know, the community as a whole, and that means having representation from the community as a whole. And I'm really pretty adamant about that this process be fair and judicious, you know, and give people a voice. If not, it lacks legitimacy. And so, you know, just how do we do that? And I really don't know the answer. And maybe that's a question for somebody else. But I think what we did today is really valuable and legitimate, and it begins the process, which is important.
Ronnie, as an advisory committee, I mean, could it be as simple as just we come up with without engaging the public, come up with what we think should be explored by the public, and then run that up the chain before we even involve the public? You know, say these are the things we're concerned about. We need to be revisited about our code, and then let the commissioners have a look at it and run it through Russell, and then seek public engagement before formalizing those changes.
I'm reluctant to do that because I think our pool is too small and our focus is too narrow. At the very least, I think we should at least consider the original stakeholder list. Like, we're supposed to be speaking for Athens-Clarke County, and how can we do that? So maybe, part of the mission of the Tree Council is to collect information and then make recommendations. So it would be easy enough for us to put out surveys or to conduct some basic stakeholder meetings, and just gather some information and compile that data to see what it says. And then we could have a better conversation. And then maybe, then it would go to other committees. Maybe that would be the better approach at this point.
Gotcha. So before we even formulate some ideas of any changes to policy, you're suggesting we gather as much information from stakeholders before we even embrace making or suggesting changes, correct?
I think so. So initially, I'm thinking of a document that I saw today, and I'm not going to be able to find it fast enough. But basically, there was a core group that involved Connie Head, the community forester, and some CTC members. It was kind of like this group that we are here, but I think it also involved landscape management, the landscape management as administrator, Roger Coffin. And they came up with some ideas, and then they took the process to a stakeholder group. And that the list of stakeholders is about 12 people, but or 12 different groups, and it included the Federation of Builders, it included the Builders Association, it included the Federation of Homeowners Associations, several different county organizations, and others. So what they engaged in before was a very good approach. I think that the approach as a whole could be expanded to, maybe have a listening session in each of the districts or something like that.
Okay.
It just depends on how this committee thinks might be a good way to proceed, really.
I know we're out of time, but I do think that stuff goes before the Government Operations Committee at the Mayor and Commission level multiple times before it ever gets put into legislative form, generally speaking. So, I mean, if there's a step along the way to make sure we're checking in with them, maybe that's after talking to some stakeholders, but before the public or something like that. I think that's certainly a valid thing, because I agree. I don't think we want to get too far down a path just to have them tell us, we don't want any of this anyways. I mean, it would be a tough thing to say if we had a bunch of public input and all the public input said they wanted it, but at the same time, at a mayor and commission level, we're going to need some support there. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to understand from Russell. And I feel like we tried to kind of pin him down on this once before, get the full answer as to when that step should best occur in the process, or when that step should multiple times best occur in the process. But I think that's a smart thing to look into.
Thank you, Mark. So we're out of time, so I guess we should adjourn. Any last thoughts before we move to adjourn the meeting? Okay, all in favor of adjourning? All right, thank you all. If you would please send me an email with your comments about what you want and why, that would be really helpful. And it'll be our first data set that we can talk about and have a conversation with.
Thanks, Rodney. All right. Anyone else sticking around is voted on to the Education Committee right now. That means Sean and Rodney are on there. See you guys. Just 1 second here. Let me pull up my agenda and have something to take some notes on. How are you all doing today?
Pretty good. How about you?
Oh, ready for this day of committee meetings to be over with. Let's see here. All right. Well, thank you, ladies. I'll try and make this quick. I think we've just got a few things to kind of look at to kind of be able to take our next steps on. So that's really kind of what I wanted to get lined up and get going. That way we can all go back and kind of gather some of our own information and bring it back to our group and get everything moving in the right direction. So that's in terms of the education committee. I, as a function of the arborist, have a small amount of education built into my position. And most of that's been through the Green School Committee and the Green School Program. And so that is most of what I know. And then I have sat around at the table at the Green Life Expo for the CTC in the past. And so that's where some of the pamphlets and the kind of trifold poster have come from. So outside of that, most everything else has come from you all. And one of the things that Lee brought up in that small amount of the little survey email I sent out to you was about focusing on who we're going to be engaging with some of these aspects and some of these programs. And so that's where I created that small chart that had schools and then communities and professionals, which I think is really a good way to look at it. The schools are a nice collective audience, and so we can get into those programs. And Stacy, I know, has been in on some emails with the Green School program. That's kind of, I guess, the whole school year is getting pushed back slightly, I guess. I think we're looking at the future anyways here. So I think we shouldn't be thinking in terms of August and September in terms of schools or some of the other programs we're looking at here getting going again. But that's where some of the Green School stuff is. Let's see here. So in terms of materials, so what I have seen are these small pamphlets, and I have no idea where they came from. But I am not about to have any of us rewrite any pamphlets. I think we just need to find a source. I'm guessing those pamphlets didn't look like they were anything locally made. So do you have any idea, Stacy, where those were pulled from, where we might be able to look at going forward?
Do you have, you show me which one you're talking about?
No, they're all like in a box in Rodney's office. They're the stuff we've kind of had hanging out at the Green Life Expo. I know one's like a BMP's to tree planting. I'm trying to think. In the planning department, we've got a trees and law pamphlet. It was just kind of some of that information. There you go. Tree planting establishment.
I'm gonna make bigger here.
Are we allowed to just use Georgia Forestry Commission brochures and stuff, do you think? Does anyone know if we would be?
Yeah, I didn't realize that was a GFC brochure. Let me see what else I got.
I just don't know the rules on taking everyone else's information, but there's definitely got to be some of these out there that we can just print up, so.
Hey, Mark, I'm not sure if you said this already. So these are what you're thinking about, pamphlets for outreach events or for schools? I'm sorry, I got confused there.
Yeah, outreach events. Yeah. I was thinking Green School curriculum would be kind of separate.
Yeah, okay, sorry, I got confused. Whatever the brochure that Rodney has in his office, it's really not that old. I don't think. So we treated it really well. Time does fly, so maybe it maybe it was a lot longer than I thought. But you know, within the last like 7 years, you know,
Okay.
right? They went through this. I thought. I mean, I wish I could see one. I wish I could see one.
I can dig a few of those up, and we can maybe the answer is that we don't need to update any of those right now. Some of them might be a little bit less specific, just getting out of the policy committee meeting to some of the issues in Athens. Maybe that would be let me do that. Let me dig those up and see maybe if we're fine with them in terms of content material. And then maybe we can look through those and see if there's anything locally, and then we can find brochures that address those. How's that sound?
Yeah, I wonder if maybe Rodney could. Have we asked him? Does he have a PDF of any of those? No.
I don't know.
Yeah, because maybe maybe he does, and it would be easy for us to just take a look at. I'm trying to search right now through some of my old CTC stuff, but Mark, you know this, that it only goes back so many years. So just in terms of like, I was looking at my emails and stuff, I'd have to dig into archives, which will take me a little bit. Hey, is Rodney on? No, he's not.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think he's hanging around to close us out when we're all done.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But I can get with him and.
Okay. Well, while we're talking, I'm gonna try and see if I can get in the archives while we're chatting.
Okay. All right. So I don't know if we want to. I made a trifold board simply just to show some of the things that our office does to be able to take to tabling events. And I did it rather quickly right before the first Green Life Expo, shortly after I started. So I don't know if we want to get into that. I mean, this is one of those things that working with the Tree Council versus my job is a little bit different. It's just that I'm dealing a lot with developers and landscape architects on commercial stuff. And while I think the community's interested in that, the community doesn't play much of a role in that. And so I don't know how much of that, where the balancing act is there. But I do like educating the community about the development process and all of our procedures. But I don't, at the same time, want to overwhelm them with things that are I don't know, just sort of in there in the code, and might be something worth, again, figuring out where the policy committee is going and updating that. But otherwise, I don't know. Do we need other presentation materials? This is something else I've never really done much of. Have you all gone to conferences and presentations and felt that there's something lacking out there in terms of trees, or know of what ACC does? I'm not trying to create any new events for anyone, but.
No, but I would say is that I think in our community, what might be more appropriate right now, understanding that you can really get a lot of tree planting information online, websites. It's like to the tip of everybody's fingers. But I think I sort of like the thing that we could do to support our community and really educate them about would be about the different programs that Tree Council has, like more in like a one-pager, maybe not a brochure. Do you know what I mean? Like, are you interested? I mean, not to bring up Dog Park stuff, but because we're sort of set that aside, but like, are you interested in the Trees for Tomorrow? Are you interested in donating? Are you interested in, are you interested in serving, like on the committee or on a board? Like, just ways to get connected to what the tree council is doing.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit more localized, I think. But maybe not a brochure, like maybe just a one pager, you know, for folks that are interested, and that way it's something that you can turn into a PDF and it can be up on our website as well, you know?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I think we're in a strange situation because we can't go out with COVID. We can't go to places and do education. We don't even know what schools are going to look like. So, and we certainly can't even go into schools or even right now. Maybe the first step would be to dig through Rodney's office or to ask him if he's got the PDFs of the brochures, and we can at least see where we're starting and what materials we have and whether we want to update them before we actually are allowed to look again.
Okay, yeah, I'll try and get all that from him, and maybe one day I can just go over there and grab a box and scan it all, if nothing else, and we can divvy them up and see where we're at from there. All right.
I really like that idea because I feel like I definitely never ever want to reinvent the wheel. Never. But I do think that, you know, since the last time the council created something, you know, things have changed, technology has changed, you know, some of our programs have changed just slightly. And so it might not be, we also are going to have a new logo, you know, right? So maybe doing maybe a quick one pager wouldn't really be that big of a deal. So creating content that is easy to use, even for teachers, you know, or I mean, just during this, this sort of crazy pandemic world that we're in right now.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. Speaking of teachers, do you have any thoughts on the Green School curriculum, Stacy? And trees, I guess, specifically.
Well, Stacy Smith is actually on vacation this week. I mean, we have, I guess, I didn't go in and I didn't have a chance to go in and look and see what was in the online lessons for trees. Is there much there, Mark?
I don't think so.
So, I mean, I can certainly put Stacy on it, and I can sort of share some of the things that that we used to do back in the day. There were some educational activities that we used to do. We used to bring into the schools. And so maybe looking at those to see if there's a way to translate those to online, or even just so that teachers can use them as a resource. If they don't need for us to come in, they could maybe do that. But I can definitely connect with Stacy and just see if what you're thinking is like we need some more tree lessons.
Okay.
Is that what you're thinking? We need some more tree lessons?
I just go to those meetings all the time and mention the fact that I would go and talk to schools and do some of that stuff, and have never really gotten into that. Just looking through the point system, the way the schools get credit for activities and things like that, I've wanted to be a part of that and just have never been, and only have limited time in my schedule. But I mean, if that was once a semester thing, that would certainly be easy enough, or once or twice a semesters for different schools, anything like that. So it's just something I've never really gotten into enough. But this is also an area where some of the other folks on the full CTC have said if you had a plan, they would go in and talk as well. So I know Mary specifically, and she has a landscape architecture background. Someone else, I think Phil had mentioned this too. I don't actually know exactly what Phil's background is, but he's definitely someone who's enjoyable to listen to and a lot of tree knowledge. So I would sit there and listen to Phil for an hour as a kid if he came into my classroom.
Yeah, I mean, I can dig out the 2 or 3 lessons that Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful used to do many years ago, before there was actually a community tree forester position, or a position that would do it. And so off the top of my head, one of them one of them we have supplies for. Another one is really more like a worksheet, just really talking about all to kids, all the things that are made of wood that we use every day. And so you sort of go through this list of things. So I can try and dig those up. I mean, just as a starting point, they might not be the best, but I certainly can get them. So.
Okay. All right. Professional education. This came from a suggestion from Lee, and so I was wondering if you had some further thoughts, Lee, about how you might want to engage that group or where we could look into.
I have all kinds of crazy ideas about it, but I don't really know how the intricacies of it works in real life. I've never been in the landscape business or even tree business. But I do know when I sit in the landscape management office, right next to Rodney's office, I know that, well, when things were normal, when the crews would go out normally, it's not now, but before, they would all come roaring in at 11 o'clock and everybody would heat up their lunch and they talk and they talk and they talk and they'd eat and they eat. And then at 11:45, they are out of there and they're back in their trucks and they're back on the road. And it just dawned on me that, well, then Rodney and I would go out and we do the tree inventory, and on Hickory Street, for example, right in front of the multimodal, it's all red maples. They've monocultured it. And a lot of them are planted just poorly, where the large dominant branches are over the street. If you had just turned it the other way, the branch could be over the sidewalk. Now you have to cut it. And so little things like that kept adding up to me. And I kept thinking, if I could just have like a half an hour with all these guys that are sitting there eating lunch, just give me a half an hour. Just delay them going out by whatever it takes. And just let me do like some basic planting tips or something that's really basic that would make it a lot easier on the community arborist or the community forester later. So that's the kind of thing that when I talk about professional, it's more of the people that are actually putting the trees in the ground. I want to get to them and just show them. I don't know. I get very frustrated because they're the ones doing it either correctly or not correctly, and then the arborists are the ones having to fix this for the next 20 years. So
Okay.
I want to get to the people on the ground, the people who are putting trees in the holes, and I want to just, I don't know, give me like a half an hour while they're eating lunch. They're all in there anyway. Just give me an extra half an hour with them, and I can just do one thing a week. Or so, I don't know. But it's just.
I wonder.
I love that. I just want to say, like, I bet you, I think Jeannie would be very open to that, particularly if it's not somebody that is on staff there, right? Like Rodney, like if it were somebody coming in from the outside, who was very respectful of, like, very clearly you guys work, in landscape and so much more, probably more than, just the way in which you approach it, but just sort of trying to say, we're just trying to make sure that everybody in the industry is using best practices and is I don't know. I think for a half an hour, I think Jeannie would let, one of us come in to a staff meeting or, do that. I think it's a great idea.
Wondering if, I don't know how many folks on like a landscape crew or ISA certified. I don't know if there's other certifications out there that if it would be something that dealt out with certification maintenance, I think that would be an easy way to get people to come join if they're going to get some credit for it in some way like that.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of programs they have for, arborists obviously have to do their hours and things, but I don't think that as you go, I don't think there's any requirements like that.
Yeah, I don't know if it could just be framed in terms of professional development that, a crew would, as Stacy was saying, I think we could get Jeannie on board pretty easily, but that would be a small group. It would be interesting to find ways to reach out beyond that to the subcontractors who I see doing crazy things or know they did crazy things when I'm out there after the fact and they're gone. I think that'd be really interesting.
Yeah.
Are there any models out there in terms of professional development that you might be familiar with or that you might be able to check out?
You know, I look for some. I have, there's nothing, I don't know the industry very well, but I will be glad to look. Do y'all know of any places to start? I mean, I guess each landscape program has its, or landscape company has its own training program. At least I would hope that they do. I don't know, maybe there's manuals. I'll look online and find.
Okay, I was gonna say I could put you in touch with one or two of our larger landscaping companies in town, and if you want to just reach out to them.
Okay. Yeah, if you just send me their information, if you think they'd be open to it, I'd be glad to.
I wonder if there's some good resources through the county extension agent.
That's a good thought.
Okay.
Okay. And then down to community education, which I know Edith had been looking into.
Here.
Hey.
Hello, everyone. You know, it's so hard to know what to expect this year, even next week, because of the pandemic. I understand the school system is offering a hybrid for parents. Children can have the choice of attending public school in person, or they can homeschool through the school system. And I think there are maybe more parents this year that are choosing to homeschool. So I've been looking at what is being done by other organizations in terms of virtual education. This is content that not only teachers could use or resources, but also parents who are doing homeschooling. So I haven't contacted any, but I did look at the websites for a number of different organizations to see, you know, what they were doing in terms of activity, community education. And there were only two really that seemed to be fairly active. One was the National Arbor Day Foundation. They have offer some online modules called Benefits of Trees, Trees Around the World, Leaf ID. They also had some Life of a Tree, photosynthesis. These are some things maybe for some of the higher elementary grades. And then it was part of their, what they call Carly's Corner, which has downloadable activity sheets too. Then the other one was Trees of Atlanta. They had some modules, and these are free. Trees of Atlanta did ask for a donation. But I can name 50 trees today: Tree Life Cycle, Urban Tree Tracker, Forest Products. So I was wondering if we would be able to compile a list of virtual resources and just get the word out there on these. And I had another question too. Are we part of the environmental education? Are we an environmental education partner with home education resources? I saw that the Water Conservation Office here is a member.
Keep Athens-Clarke County Beautiful is a member of the EE in Georgia, which is environmental education in Georgia. Is that what you're referring to? Edith, is that what you're talking talking about is EE in Georgia. Oh, we can't hear you.
I saw through the Water Conservation Office, they were offering educational activities for home. This is in Athens-Clarke County.
Stacy, could you email Edith what you were and see if that's the same type of thing we were talking about, what KACCB is doing?
Yeah, no, it's a membership. It's EE in Georgia, which stands for Environmental Education in Georgia. And like I know we're members, and Stormwater, Cecile's a member, and Water Conservation Office is also a member. And so what that means is that I mean, yes, we can tap into some resources because we're members. We also can communicate with other folks around the state. So it could be that we could put a call out there to those folks to see who has virtual tree lesson plans, right?
Right.
How does the organization of that work, Stacy? Does it matter? I mean, you guys are, a little bit more official than the Community Tree Council. Could the Community Tree Council be involved in that?
So I'm looking it up right now because I can't remember. The membership fee is not really that much. And I'm trying to see, I'm just looking under resources really quickly to see if there's some virtual stuff. I haven't looked on here in a while, so but you can type in EE in Georgia and it'll come up.
Okay.
And the CTC could be I do know that they have a nonprofit rate for becoming a member. It might be something we want to do.
Is there an obligation of the organization to provide anything, or is it more about resource sharing?
Am I still on? Yeah. Okay. It's more about resource sharing lessons. Like I'm looking at here's 6th to 8th grade, and so they have lessons about air pollution, garbage galore, schoolyard watershed. Let's see. I'm trying to see if there's anything tree. They try to align some of these things with the state standards. Here's one for 8th grade that's properties of air, which somehow could, lead into trees. Let me just sort of keep looking. But yeah, I mean, you guys can see some of these things too. I think if you just type in EE in Georgia, and whether or not this looks like it's something you guys would be interested in.
Okay, how about we all take a look at that and send around an email later this week.
Okay.
What was the first organization you mentioned, Edith? I was trying to take some notes down here. Not the Four Trees Atlanta.
Arbor Day Foundation.
Arbor Day Foundation. Okay.
And let's see.
I feel like the big question right now is because there's a lot of resources out there about trees and tree lesson plans, but it's really about who has some virtual stuff, right? I mean, that's what we be able to provide. Is that right?
Right now, yeah. I think that's what we need right now. I did find this one booklet. This is published by the county. It's called A Field Guide to the Community Tree Management Ordinance. And it's the only booklet I've gotten from the county. Booklet. And it really just sums up the ordinance basically, which is good. Not really what we're talking about with education, but it's helpful.
I mean, I'm looking at Carly's Corner, which is which is arborday.org, and they do have printable sheets. And so I guess it's just, are we looking for something more like interactive? Yeah. Or is it more just some of these resources like lesson plans and games and maps?
I guess personally, I would like to get something more interactive at some point, but I think this is a good start. I don't know. I have very little education background other than going to school myself as a child, and not paying very good attention.
I had not taken any of these courses to see if they were interactive. I can go ahead and try some of those.
So I'm going to make a note to try and dig up this one plan a week for kids that I don't know, like I might be able to get one of my colleagues in the solid waste department to video us doing some videos for us in the solid waste department. And and then that way, like if I found this lesson plan, it was kind of fun. It was like a musical thing, and it was like a story that was read. But we did something similar for Compost Awareness Week. I don't know, Mark, did you see our skit from International Compost Awareness Week?
Yeah, I think so.
Did you?
I thought Mason sent it out.
Yeah, you need to go check that out. I was like, we were all in disguise.
I thought he sent me something that looked like a bunch of characters, but I.
It was. You got to, yeah. It was good. You guys all need to look that up. So what he did is he came and all of us played a different part. And so then Mason came and he videoed our parts, and then he went and he pulled it all together and made it into like this really cute, little video. But I could imagine us doing something like that to, even if it was only, 5 minutes long, it's just something that teachers could, click on and have kids watching someone else, or those kids that are being virtually learning, they could also click on that. So, idea.
Is Mason going to write this up for us by any chance?
No, the thing is that this lesson plan that we had was, it was a story that was read, and kids would have different musical instruments, which is where we would have to change it up a little bit, that all at the end sounded like wind coming through the trees. And so when they all played together in sync, it sounded like wind coming through the trees. So it was just sort of a fun little, it gave us the podium to sort of talk about trees and the importance of trees, but it was interactive with the kids. So they really, they really liked it. So, but I'm just sort of wondering, I'm not totally sure because I haven't done it. Stacy Smith goes into the classroom all the time now. It's been a long time since I've done that, but so I don't know that it would be seamless, but it's worth a shot. I can just try and look for it and see. It might be a way where we as a community tree council could create something of our own.
Okay, sounds cool. All right. The last thing I had for us to talk about was making the shade informational component. And I don't remember ever doing this for making the shade in the past. And I had asked, I could probably find it. I had asked about the application because I just don't even know what's on there, what we're even supposed to provide, or what's thought about to be provided. Do you have have you ever done that before, Stacy? I know you've been involved with some of the other Making the Shade, but.
Sorry, sorry. I'm sorry. Ask the question again, because I was like typing to my colleague to look for the lesson plan. I'm totally multitasking.
Did you in any of the past iterations of the Making the Shade that the CTC was involved with, were there informational components? I don't really remember that aspect of it.
Stacy, you're muted, Stacy.
I can't keep going back and forth. It's too much for me. Mic on, mic off, mic on, mic off. Okay, so over the years, I remember us using Arbor Day as the platform to sort of bring the Made in the Shade grant together. We would go into the schools. It had different iterations. Sometimes there was like an art contest. There was a writing contest. There was always a tree planting that happened at the school. So, I mean, and then I think a couple different times, like Maureen O'Brien and I may have gone in and you know, done a activity. So it sort of always happened around Arbor Day, though. So, you know, that was, I think, intentional when they did the grant and knowing when we were going to plant the tree, and because then you could use the tree planting as a part of Tree City USA, that we did this educational component, you know, because that is a requirement of being a Tree City USA. So the answer is yes, but it was in different forms. You know, it really had a lot to do with who was on the education committee. So that was back like when Jerry Bowden was real active on the education committee. So was Maureen O'Brien. And so they would, you know, they looked for those kind of opportunities, and they would change it up sometimes. So I've seen art contests, I've seen writing contests, I've seen poetry contests. So is
it meant for a specific audience? Is it meant for the local audience where the planting goes? Can it be broader than that?
Well, the Made in the Shade grants were always on schoolyards, right?
I thought we got one for the Rock Springs. Is that different?
Yes, that's different. That's a different.
Okay.
Made in the Shade came out of Georgia Forestry, and that was different. The grants that we have been doing for the housing authority sites, which would include both Rock Springs and Broad Acres, those are grants that came through Keep America Beautiful. They're UPS, Keep America Beautiful, tree restoration grants. So they're a different name, really sort of has a different purpose. The Made in the Shade grants were really specific to schools or community centers, maybe too, I think. But I think we had several years of moving from school to school. I mean, a lot of the trees that you see now at the schools were planted by the Community Tree Council, because back then the school district would come in and they would literally level down like the area. They would take all the trees out and they would build a school, and then they would open up the school and there'd be like 2 trees on the front parking lot area. You know, so that was sort of a part of why this came to be, was because there was just no trees in some of these schoolyards. So different grant.
Okay. I found the application here, but I'm unfamiliar with this. Do we need this component to apply?
Are you looking at, tell me what application you're looking at.
Forestry Commission Making the Shade program application. I don't see a date on here.
Yeah, there was for a couple years they didn't have those grants. I feel like maybe the funding ran out for a few years. So I wonder, yeah, try and find a date and see if that's applicable to 2020.
This has a Joan Scales, whereas I would think it would have Seth's email on here.
Well, no. Joan is, Joan is still with the Forestry Commission,
Okay.
I believe. And I think they're just in different, I don't know, they all sort of move around sometimes, but I think Joan is still at the district office. Maybe she's moved up. Maybe she's at the Northeast. Maybe that's what it is. She's at like the Northeast Georgia, like the larger geographic district office.
I can find out. I'm working on a project with her this summer.
Oh, see, there you go.
So, I've got a direct line to her if we need her.
Yeah.
And also, I'm working with Joe Burgess too. He's like the guru of tree ordinances.
I feel like the Made in the Shade grant, I feel like they ran out of money a few years ago, and does anybody else recall that? You guys? Okay. So, that's just the question, like, do they still have the Made in the Shade grant?
Yeah, I just found it online. I saw the grant before, but now I see the program and it has a link to the application. It looks like the same application. This is on their current website. I guess it makes much more sense for an educational component if it's going into the schools.
The other thing is that if it is something we want to look at, again, I don't really like to reinvent the wheel, so I imagine that grant, I know, I still have a line to Maureen. I'm sure there's got to be copies of those grants somewhere. So,
wasn't this the one they were talking about being due in a week or two or something like that?
No. That's the Keep America Beautiful UPS grant.
Okay.
So confusing.
Okay, so we have some time on this one then.
I'm like stressing. I'm like, I'm like worried because I have to submit that grant. So I only know that,
Yeah, that's what I thought you had volunteered. Okay. Yeah, I don't see any deadlines or any. Let me reach out about this one then. And then we can go from there. How about that? This one was thrown on to us by everyone else in the CTC, so I thought this was the one that we were currently applying for. That's what I thought was the speed needed, but let me find a little more information and I'll get back to everyone on that one.
Yeah, and the thing about that would be, like I said, there's got to be a grant out there that it probably wouldn't be too tough. To at least have the bones of the grant, but it's about figuring out which school, who needs the trees, and being able to have that communication with the administration there as well as with the district.
Okay. Yeah, I know Hillsman and Oglethorpe just got finished and they both decimated their trees there. And then someone else, I guess Barnett Shoals was a year or so ago. I know I saw at least a few trees planted out there as opposed to Oglethorpe and Hillsman. But. Okay, let me dig into that one a little bit more. I thought that was the one coming right up now. So, and I've taken 3 times as long as I said I would for this meeting. So, unless anyone else has some other thoughts or questions, I would say that's a wrap on the first round of the Education Committee.
All right.
Okay, so I'm just gonna try and, just so that I know what my little action items are here. I'm gonna go ahead and try and see if I can't find that tree activity in our storage. I think it's up in our storage somewhere, and then maybe even talk to Mason about it. And also, I'm gonna see if there's actually any other ones too. I'm gonna connect with Stacy about that. And if you want me to, I can connect with Maureen O'Brien, or do you want to first make sure that the Made in the Shade grant is available, or it's something you want to do?
Yeah, let me make sure that is, and then, I mean, it was brought up by, I guess, Sean and someone else at the CTC, so I guess maybe they heard there was money for it again, or maybe Seth brought it up. Seth was in on our meeting, so maybe Seth brought it up. I'm totally confused now as to which grant it was and how it all kind of came back about. So that all sounds good. If you'll take those steps, Stacy, I will email some stuff to Lee about some landscape contacts for professional development. And if Edith, if you'll keep looking into the EE in Georgia to see if we can, if that would be a good idea for us to play a role in, and some of the other activities that, you know, I know you're still looking into some other activities to compile for that. That would be great.
Yeah, and I'll send an email to everyone on what I find.
And I'll try and dig through all of our old brochures and pamphlets, and we can kind of see if we're missing anything on that end. So I think that covers where we were at. Well, thank you, ladies. I appreciate you taking some time this afternoon, and hope you all are staying safe and well. And I will talk to you all soon.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
Bye.
Thanks, Mark. Bye, y'all.
See you. Rodney, are you listening? Okay, I am all done. I'll email him. I don't know if he's